Hey everybody, I think it's time for us to take a look and a listen to voice types as we get closer to the opening of our 2014 opera season. I'll take a couple of podcasts to do this, starting with the women today and the men at a later time, hopefully next week. Now, we all know the basic five, right? Soprano, mezzo-soprano, tenor, baritone, bass. But there are categories within those basic voice types that we should become familiar with, and we've got great examples of many of them coming up in our 4 opera productions, Pagliacci, The Elixir of Love, A Masked Ball, and Don Quixote, all in this season 2014. So let's get busy. We'll start with sopranos and go from the lighter voices to the darker, heavier ones. The pants role, or trouser role of Oscar in Verdi's A Masked Ball, is the lightest of the soprano roles that we have coming this season. What you'd call a light lyric soprano with coloratura ability. I don't often use the old terminology coloratura soprano anymore because I think it focuses too much on the singer's ability to sing high and fast with great flexibility. Lots of singers can do that. I think it's better to concentrate on the color and the texture of the voice itself, because every role demands both rapid coloratura passages as well as slow lyrical passages in whatever the singer is expected to sing, right? Here's an example from the role of Oscar, a bit of the aria Saper vorreste from the last act of the opera. As you were able to tell from just using your ears, this is a very light voice, capable of many wonderful coloristic effects. Next down on the scale of soprano voices would be the straight lyric soprano, and she's represented this season by the role of Adina in Donizetti's The Elixir of Love. Coloratura is demanded in this role, certainly, but overall, it's simply a much more lyric role than the role of Oscar. This isn't a character role, but a significant romantic lead whose music is essentially lyrical with long phrases that demand a good amount of breath control and which also demand a constant beauty of tone. That's what you're really looking for. Listen for instance, to this lovely moment from Act 1 of the Donizetti opera as Adina comments on the book that she happens to be reading about the age of chivalry and the legend of Tristan und Isolde.
sapessi la ricetta, conoscessi chi ti fa.
E che sempre si perfetta,
Okay, so that's the lyric soprano. Now let's get a bit darker, a bit more dramatic, and that would be the spinto soprano, or lyric dramatic soprano. You could even call her a Verdi soprano, because it was that composer, Giuseppe Verdi, who stretched the demands of these female roles at his operas, challenging them to be tender and lyrical in some moments, and then have to turn around and release all of their power in the more dramatic moments. The role of Amelia in A Masked Ball is a perfect example of this kind of soprano. Notice how much darker and, well, bigger the sound is than the light lyric Oscar and the lyric soprano Adina are. I mean, this is just really amazing, the difference in color. You could describe the sound as thicker, broader, with more depth, more penetration. These voices are meant to be heard over a larger orchestra than would have been typical of Donizetti, Rossini, or other composers writing operas prior to Verdi. Here's a bit of Amelia's aria from Act 2 of A Masked Ball. You'll notice the difference in color immediately. So those are the sopranos. What about the mezzo-sopranos? Mezzos have a lower center of gravity than the soprano does. Typically, we have a naturally robust, darker sound. We have two great examples in this season, but the one voice type of the mezzos that's missing is the lyric coloratura mezzo. That is a mezzo-soprano whose darker vocal qualities don't struggle with the ability to sing quickly and easily. And the voice type came about in the comedies of Rossini, where the female lead has to be spunky, tricky, and smarter than all the men. Rosina in The Barber of Seville is a perfect example. Here's a coloratura passage from her aria Una voce poco fa. So that gives you a good idea of what's missing in this season. But what we do have this season is the straight lyric mezzo-soprano, exemplified by the role of Dulcinea in Massenet's Don Quixote. The character seems to be patterned after Bizet's Carmen, but she certainly doesn't have the dramatic demands of that very taxing role. It's much more lyrically oriented than Carmen. And for her more important moments on stage, she doesn't have to fight with a large orchestra to make a sound. Here's a good example. The aria that she sings during the opening of the opera, Don Quixote. There's a little bit of coloratura demanded at the opening. There's a kind of flamenco-like salvo that she surprises us all with. But then it's sheer lyricism. The orchestra treating itself like a guitar.
majesté suprême ne doit pas avoir dans attrait l'embassé dans vos diadèmes. Mais après, mes amis, on vit dans une apothéose, vos jours sont de gloire entourés, mais il doit manquer quelque chose ou
Finally, we come to the dramatic mezzo-soprano. We used to give these roles to contraltos, the lowest ranged and most penetrating female sound in the opera world. But contraltos are very hard to come by, so these roles now typically go to mezzo-sopranos whose voices match the qualities demanded in roles like Azucena in Il Trovatore by Verdi, Amneris in Aida by Verdi, and Ulrica in A Masked Ball by Verdi. The dramatic demands are considerable, and the voice often has to compete against a full complement of orchestral instruments, chorus, and other soloists. Because of that, Verdi takes pity on the very first Ulrica, giving her only one scene in A Masked Ball. But what a scene, and what singing is demanded of her. So that's about it for today. Next time I'll explore the world of men in opera, the tenors, the baritones, and the basses. Till then, I'll see you at the opera.